Welcome back. The results have been tallied, and the class of 2024 is in place. A little snowfall in Cooperstown this morning. It was a big day up there last night. We had our live coverage and learned together of the class of 2024. We are joined by Brian Kenny and Jayson Stark, who are still there enjoying the scene. Gentlemen, thanks for some time today. We want to get your full reaction, as much canvas as you need to talk about the class of 2024. We tried our best not to go negative at the top of the show today in expressing our displeasure over Billy Wagner falling 5 votes short. I know you both have thoughts on that, so as I tee it up to you, let's begin right there with Billy's case.
Maddie, I'm absolutely with you. And I had to do the same thing in my own head last night, even when I was walking back to Josh Rowich when he made the official announcement, the president of the Baseball Hall of Fame, where I had to think, okay, let's think about what we have and not what we don't have. But I'm with you. And Jayson, I'm sure we both felt that way. Like when Josh, I don't know when Josh is making the announcement how deep he's going to go. I don't find out ahead of time. I don't want to know. I don't want to give it away. I don't want my face to betray, like, did anybody get in or not? So I'm waiting to walk back into Josh at the official announcement on live TV. And so when he got to 3, I felt the same way Maddie did in that, I thought we might get one more. 5 votes shy of a 4-man class. And yet, 3 get in, right? 3 inductees, Jayson, and 2 first ballot. That is still a very good class, and we didn't expect Joe Mauer to go in first ballot up until the tracking clearly showed that he was getting that support.
Yeah, well, it's a great class. It really is. Adrian Beltre, 95.1%. It's the same percentage as Babe Ruth. Like, that'll be a cool thing to put on his business card, right?
There was tougher voting in 1936, too, yeah.
Okay, I'm aware of that, but nevertheless, it sounds good. And then, I just love that Joe Mauer and Todd Helton were both one-team players. It's only the 6th time last half-century we've had 2 players first ballot or played for just one team who were elected by the baseball writers. And, JP was talking about this earlier. It's really cool when that happens because there's such a connection between those players and their fan base, right, and they come to Cooperstown to celebrate it.
Right. And just to briefly get in, look, Beltre had built like a sensational resume by the time he was done. He was not a Hall of Fame player through his age 30 season, really, and he ends up being the total bases leader, the hits leader at the position all time. He gets in. Joe Mauer, though, did not have those totals. Again, just briefly, I thought 35 to 50%, maybe year 1, and then he builds. Even very good players get on the ballot, great players, and they have to build. Look at Chase Utley down at 29%, who was, I don't know, equally as great at his peak, I thought, as Joe Mauer. But Mauer just went in, with a claim. I was stunned by, especially the early tracking that had him over 80%.
Yeah, there was a huge disparity between what we saw in the public votes for Joe Mauer and what we saw when the results were in. You had Jayson Sardell on MLB Now yesterday, the greatest Hall of Fame election prognosticator that there is, and he thought that Mauer at the most would decline into the upper 70s, and he wound up making it by 4 votes. But look at the difference between the public and private voting, Brian. According to Jayson Sardell, there's never been a player who fell as much as Joe Mauer, public to private, and still got elected. So we've never seen anything like that. He was doing really well with the small hall voters who went public, but apparently not well at all with the small hall voters who went private. And it's really hard to understand what exactly we just saw.
There's still a schism that I think I underrated that's still there. I don't want to go, especially with Harold there, old school, new school. But I used to rail 20 years ago, especially 15 years ago, I'd rail against your brethren who would hold the line at Hank Aaron, and say, wait a second, you can go a little bigger than that. And I was always talking about, hey, look, Ron Santo, take a closer look, use context, look at the run-scoring environment, look at the positional scarcity of a player, like adjust to that. Now that it's much more liberal. Most of the young voters are going by wins above replacement, career WAR. I'm not saying that these, quote-unquote, old-school writers, the guys who aren't making their ballots public, that they're wrong. If you want to hold the line at 2 guys in this class, I think it's perfectly legitimate. And you do have to safeguard the exclusivity of this club. I understand that.
Yeah, well, the 75% is what makes it great, is that it's so hard. Billy Wagner got almost 74% of the vote. If he did that in the New Hampshire primary, you know what they'd call it? a landslide. In the Hall of Fame election, they say, good luck next year. So I understand that part. But, the funny thing is, Brian, we spent so much time yesterday talking about how voters have changed, voters have evolved, and we're not looking so much for the counting numbers now. We're looking for big peaks, and it really seemed like it played into Joe Mauer's strengths. What we saw when those private votes were announced, when the full balloting was announced, was not everybody's there. And in general, those voters who don't reveal publicly before the vote are the most old school voters. But you're absolutely right, because I tell my fellow voters this all the time. There's no right ballot, there's no wrong ballot. There's only your ballot.
Right, and just work at it. But I don't even know how many hits Chase Utley had in his career. I don't even know. It's a very, it's a very 1946 way of looking at baseball, where I don't have a baseball encyclopedia to look year by year. I don't have the modern tools to use OPS Plus to see how Chase Utley would compare to either Joe Morgan or Charlie Gehringer or Rogers Hornsby, or use WAR, which tells you that Chase Utley was the second best player in baseball for a good 10-year stretch behind only Albert Pujols. So, you have all these modern tools that you can use. That's the only thing I would say for an old school voter. It's like, does he have 3,000 hits? He only has 1,800 hits. I'm like, what did a guy do year by year? I think that's a better way of evaluating greatness and Hall of Fame candidacy.
Yeah, and we're going to have to use that moving forward, because if we're going to rate around for just 3,000 hit guys, okay, well, once we get through Ichiro, Albert Pujols, Miggy Cabrera, how long is it going to be till the next 3,000 hit guy? We might not elect somebody for 15 years.
It's like a 300-game winner. It's not happening.
If we wait for 300-game winners, we'll never elect anybody, any pitcher to the Hall of Fame. So we've got to evolve as voters, and we've got to think about this, because Buster Posey arrives in this ballot in 2 years with only 1,500 career hits, but 3 World Series, Rookie of the Year, MVP, the clear face of the franchise of a 3-time World Series winner. I don't know how that guy's not a Hall of Famer, but from what we saw yesterday, especially the Utley public versus private, almost 40% public, under 20% private, we've got a long ways to go for all the voters to get there.
That'd be my ultimate test, and I hope Harold and Maddie get to talk about this. Think of Buster Posey and Yadier Molina. Molina has a low WAR number, right? And Buster Posey only has these small counting numbers. But think it through. Are they Hall of Famers? They're both Hall of Famers. There's ways of getting there. Look, use all your skills of evaluation with metrics, with what you saw, with winning championships, with what's a winning player. There's a lot of ways to evaluate it, and that's it. Maddie, I've gone, and even Harold, you'd be proud of me. Again, it's what were you thinking while you were watching the guy? What's the level of greatness? I can back it up with metrics that might help validate it, but if it's not there, sometimes things go beyond the metrics. I said it, Harold. There we go.
I love it. And the part you guys just talked about, too, the game is evolving and changing. You have to evolve and change with the times, or we'll have no players in the Hall. I'm a big Hall guy. If we're going to sit here and wait for Babe Ruth, I'm sorry, we may as well shut the doors now.
But, I have on that note, I have a question for Jayson, actually, and Harold and I talked about this when we went on the air today. As a member of the BBWAA and a longstanding member in good standing, is there ever a reevaluation of who gets a ballot? Because there are, and I get your statement earlier was well taken, that everybody has a right to think the way they want and vote the way they want. But some of the people that are voting make me scratch my heads.
Well, Matty, that's a really interesting question. There was a big change back in 2016. Before then, we had a number of voters who were no longer covering baseball, hadn't covered baseball for over a decade, and they got lopped off the voting rolls. And so that cut the number of voters from close to 600 to yesterday we had 385. That's the lowest total in about 40 years. But we haven't talked, to my knowledge, about an evaluation that would change that moving forward. I'm open to all kinds of tweaks to the voting process. The guy standing next to me thinks and cares about the Hall of Fame as much as anyone I know on planet Earth. He doesn't have a vote. I'd be good with that. I don't have the power to grant him a vote, but I'd be good with that.
Thank you.
We would too. We would too.
No, we see more baseball than most. Sorry, BK, you talk, then I'll talk.
Right. Also, Broadcasters as well. I'll say that one quick thing. Like, look, Bill James doesn't have a vote. The official historian of Major League Baseball is John Thorne. He doesn't have a vote, right? I think you guys work very hard at it now. It made a lot of sense in the 1930s, like who should vote on the Hall of Fame? Well, the guys who were going to the games every day and writing about it. The baseball world has expanded by then, and I think there should be some sort of added pool of people who study this on a regular basis, because Hall of Fame's study and evaluation is done year-round now by many people, and they are very worthy of having a chance to evaluate, I believe.
It's so true. Look, the Elias Sports Bureau members have votes, okay? But for some reason, Brian Kenny doesn't have a vote. You just mentioned John Thorne doesn't have a vote. I could come up with a great list if we wanted to expand the pool in that way, but look, it's baseball. Change happens slowly, and I don't know how long it would take for that change to happen.
Guys, we appreciate you today. Thanks for sticking up there a little extra this morning to be on with us, and safe travels back home. Thanks.